And whether it's health, whether it's agriculture, infrastructure, there have been a lot of demands placed on the government. Thus far, we've put up $320 billion, and aviation, of course, has benefited to the tune of more than $1 billion. I know that the announcement on March 18, where we made sure that there was the waiving of fuel excise fees, the waiving of Air Services Australia fees, the waiving indeed of regional security and other security fees that are imposed normally by government were waived and backdated to 1 February. And so what that meant was the fact that there was immediate cash flow for the airlines, and particularly for Virgin and Qantas. They were able to engage in that. And of course, 10 days later, I announced the regional subsidisation of funds of services for to the tune of $198 million for those 138 centres so reliant on aviation that they were able to partake in that, and we underwrote the airlines to the tune, those regional airlines, to the tune of $100 million. Well, today's $165 million announcement is going to make the world a difference for those commuters who've come in from overseas, done their 14 days of quarantine. Let me tell you, if they landed in Sydney and required to get back to Perth with very limited services available, it's a long drive in a hire car over the Nullarbor. And so that's going to make a difference for them. It's also, of course, going to have in those planes defence personnel, key medical personnel, but most importantly as well, people and medical equipment. I know Greg Hunt has done an outstanding job acquiring, making through Karen Andrews and her efforts as the Industry Minister, personal protection equipment, and indeed getting those face masks and other necessary gear, medicine, etc. On those flights. That's why today's domestic network announcement is so important, and I know that it's been welcomed by both Qantas, by both Virgin, and certainly by the consumers who are going to take part in those flights over the next 2 months. Any questions?
You say it's going to be reviewed after 8 weeks. We're talking about maybe the lockdown starting to be eased in a month's time. When do you think domestic aviation will get back to sort of like I guess a semi-normal state where it won't need government subsidy to operate?
Well, that'll depend on what the chief medical experts say, and of course we've taken the advice of Professor Brendan Murphy. We've taken the advice of the state chief medical officers and the territory chief medical officers. They've been meeting on a daily basis to ensure that what we do, everything is geared towards making sure we save lives and we protect livelihoods. And whether it's the announcements that we've done today, whether it's JobSeeker, JobKeeper, every announcement that we've made is aimed at addressing the health pandemic crisis first and foremost, and of course making sure that we can protect as many jobs, protect as many businesses and protect as many workers as possible. So yes, you're right. They will reassess the lockdowns and the various border issues in 4 weeks' time, and that's appropriate. We need to, during the next month, make sure that we follow the restrictions, make sure we follow the advice that Professor Murphy and others have given, because it is saving lives. The 63 families who've lost loved ones, for them that is tragic, and it seems a long time ago on March 1 when James Kwan was the first Australian to unfortunately and tragically lose his life as part of this COVID-19 global pandemic. And it seems a long time ago. But rest assured, Australia has done very well, if you could use those terms, compared to other countries. And you look at Great Britain, and I know they've been doing everything they can to ease and contain the outbreak, but they've lost something in the order of 12 to 13,000 people. It's a country a little bit with more than two times the population of Australia. And when you compare what they've endured and what they've suffered and compare it to what we've had, we've done reasonably well, and we will continue to make sure that we place the health of Australians first and foremost.
Deputy Prime Minister, how important is it for regional economies that the retail sector, the shops, the cafes, the restaurants are reasonably early in the opening up of our economy when that starts?
Well, once the Chief Medical Officer says it's okay to resume life as normal or ease some of the restrictions. Of course, it's important for any business, be they in regional areas or metropolitan, to be able to reopen and restart and resume life as best they can. Particularly, you mentioned regional areas, and regional areas have endured the summer from hell. Those bushfires took such a swathe through so many areas of regional Australia, and the tourists, we wanted them back, and of course COVID-19 hit hard, and of course then we've said to everybody, stay at home and stay away from regional areas. I led that messaging because I didn't want outbreaks in regional areas where the medical facilities aren't what they are in capital city areas. Yes, we've got some of the best health professionals, we've got some of the best hospitals, but we can't have any outbreaks. We can't have any. We can't accommodate any outbreaks that our medical professionals, despite the fact that we've opened up rural respiratory clinics and one opened in my hometown of Wagga Wagga just this week. But we don't want any outbreaks. We've seen how devastating that is for northwest Tasmania. What we want to see is those businesses able to open when they can, but on the advice of the Chief Medical Officer.
That reports today that a consortium interested in looking at Virgin are encouraging. Is that the only scenario that the government is relying on to ensure that Virgin and Qantas can weather the storm?
We want to see a market resolution, a market solution for Virgin. Yes, Virgin were not going as well as Qantas prior to COVID-19, of course, hitting, and Qantas's balance sheets were quite healthy. Of course, we will remember back in 2013-14 when Qantas were struggling, and they too wanted some assistance. Fortunately, they were able to get that capital. They were able to re-energise, and through good management led by Alan Joyce, they were able to get their books back in the black and very healthy. We want to see that situation for Virgin too, but I know and I'm confident that there is a market solution for Virgin. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but that's a bit hypothetical. Let's see what happens. I know, and if you read reports today, that there are some people who are interested in capitalising Virgin, and we hope that comes off.
So, though, if there's sort of venture capitalists who would be more inclined to maybe cut and slash and burn the company to return it to profitability, even though it might not be the same sort of Virgin that we've expected. There's no reason why Virgin can't come out of COVID-19. They get more capital. We don't want to see assets sweated. We don't want to see a cutback in the services that Virgin so well provided prior to COVID-19, and certainly for regional areas. They have provided competition. They have provided competition on the domestic and international markets. We want to see that, but they've also ensured that for some of those regional routes that there were services available that perhaps would not have been otherwise available. So I want to see a two-airline solution. I want to see both airlines come through COVID-19. We'll be monitoring the situation. I'll be continuing to talk, as I have done on a daily basis, with the key airline executives. I want to make sure that we see them both through this, and that's why we've put more than $1 billion on the table, and Virgin have been assisted by the measures that we have announced so far, and certainly benefiting from today's announcement.
Malcolm Turnbull says that the AFP then Commissioner Andrew Colvin told him George Christensen had an unusually complex online presence, was spending substantial sums in bars and nightclubs in the Philippines, as well as making many small payments to women there. You received a similar briefing. Is Malcolm Turnbull accurate?
I'm not concentrating on Malcolm Turnbull's book. Well done to Malcolm for writing his memoirs. I'm not going to be reading it any time soon. I've got any number of infrastructure briefs. I've only yesterday called all the state and territory ministers for infrastructure and transport together and talked to them about what we could do in that space, what we could do with bringing infrastructure forward. That's my concentration at the moment. We've been through this.
Christensen to stand by his Christian belief as he does and visit venues like this, as the AFP briefed Malcolm Turnbull and yourself that he did?
George has answered everything. He has answered everything. He certainly made sure that all his travel claims that he answered those queries, that he paid back any. Please, John, you've asked the question. He's paid back anything that he needed to pay back, and more as well. And certainly the AFP found nothing to even query the fact that any laws had been broken.
with this sort of behaviour by Mr Christensen?
Well, it's a matter for George and certainly the people who elect him to Parliament. And at the May election last year, they re-endorsed him with about an 11% swing towards him. So he's turned a marginal seat of Dawson into a very healthy seat because he works hard. He works hard for the people of Dawson, and moreover, he delivers. Those people in that central north Queensland seat can rely on George to deliver for them. He's not somebody who's ever quiet. He comes to Canberra, he makes a noise whether he's in Mackay, he makes a noise whether he's down in Canberra, but he certainly represents the interests of the people who vote for him and others besides very diligently, and I support him in that.
Prime Minister, can I ask you about regional Australians, particularly during this COVID-19 pandemic? You've got situations like the Royal Flying Doctor Service in position to try and fly people should they get sick and should the health system be overwhelmed. Are you open to proposals or ideas from other organisations that may come forward about being able to carry intensive care patients en masse from regional cities into capital city hospitals?
Well, first of all, Frank Quinnell from the Royal Flying Doctor Service has been very supportive in the measures that we have done, that I announced on March 28, $100 million to underwrite airlines, and they can also partake in that overall $298 million announcements that I made for the services and for the underwriting of the airlines back on that date. And Frank has expressed his support, as has Bruce Scott, the former member for Maranoa, who only messaged me yesterday to say how well we'd done for the Royal Flying Doctor Service and, more importantly, for the people in those remote areas, those rural and regional locations that they service. Yes, of course we're open, and that announcement back on March 28 is also open to other people in the aeromedical space, and I know some have contacted us and approached us as to how they can partake, and we've given them the right information about how they can as well participate in those sorts of subsidising and that sort of underwriting.
Deputy Prime Minister, the government today has announced $150 million in assistance for the NBN for families and businesses to stay connected. What's it say that 12 years after the conception of the NBN, the government has to come in with $150 million to keep us connected in these circumstances?
Well, what it says is that a lot more people are working from home, and of course when a lot more people are doing the right thing, and we thank them for that, and staying at home and stopping and containing and preventing the spread of COVID-19, by working at home and by teleconferencing and by Zooming and by doing such things as downloading apps and house partying their friends and colleagues rather than in fact inviting them around. So they're doing the right thing and they're making sure that they save lives. What it also does is place a strain on the system. When we came back into government in 2013, the NBN was an absolute mess, and it's taken good and diligent work by our ministers, lately led by Paul Fletcher, to fix the situation, and so I'm very pleased with that. And with the communications and with anything, we have supported it through this COVID-19 crisis with putting more money in, by investing more taxpayers' dollars, because we want to save lives and protect livelihoods.